A quick note for listeners. Mr. Keazor was at the time sitting in a cafe, so you will be hearing some background noise on that end. Also, just to clarify for the final question, because it does cut off, the question was what he hoped the overall outcome of his presence at the festival would be. Welcome to the Artmiabo International Art Festival podcast. I'm your host, Giftin Yadike, here to speak to the minds behind the festival and the participating artists in the hopes of gaining an understanding of the work that went into this monumental event and give the outside world a window into the African art scene, which has been witnessing an incredible boom in popularity and notoriety around the globe. On this episode, I had the honor of speaking to filmmaker, author, lawyer, and Afrobeats legend Ed Keazor. Thank you very much for your time. I know you're very busy, especially with the festival being. So, the first question, could you please introduce yourself for those who may be unfamiliar with you?
Okay, my name is Nze Ed Emeka Keazor. Now, Nze is actually my traditional chieftaincy title in Igbo land, whereas where I come from in Nigeria, it's traditional. We'd be addressed with that, in within traditional setting. I'm a lawyer, an historian, a writer, journalist, and a filmmaker. I've been in this space for about, going on about, almost 40 years. And worked in both. I'm Anglo-Nigerian, which means I was here, both British and Nigerian, and I worked in both territories. That's in a nutshell is who I am. I've made several films, which won a few awards, both for the films and also for my research by Cambridge University, who gave me an award for my research in African history about 8 years ago. And my space is really the retelling of the African story, the new paradigm of, without necessarily being the underdogs, but actually reclaiming not just a fabled heroic past, but getting templates.
Thank you very much.
Of achievements and a non-binary approach to this. Yeah.
All right. So, the second question was if you could expand a bit more on your artistic and professional journey. What led you down this path?
Okay. Because there's so many strands to what I do, I am still a practicing lawyer, albeit I retired last year, so I'm working more as a consultant. What led me down that path is preference. I come from a legal family. Father's a lawyer, two sisters, a sister and a brother are lawyers, so, several uncles. So that's always been my first love, so to speak. But I'm also a musician and composer and producer, as well as a filmmaker. So that creative side is more. I started making films.
All right, thank you very much.
14 years ago. Yeah,
as you know,
that's what led me down.
This year's Artmiabo International Art Festival is going to be Art of Afrobeats. And as a performing artist yourself, and someone who's, as you stated, and as many might be familiar with, has been in this space for over 4 decades. What is it about the festival that drew you in?
No, it's very simple. The individuals driving it. Miabo Yadike she's a bit too modest for her own good. She's a legend. She's a legendary artist, very fearless, very talented, and very with a high level of integrity in her focus. And she approached me to via herself and Emeka Yadike, her husband, approached me last year to say they'd like to dedicate part of the festival, this year's festival, to my work. And I consider it a singular honor because yes, I've won a few awards in my life, but like this, I didn't see this one coming. And when it comes from people whom you respect and who don't make frivolous who would not give a frivolous award. It's something I was obviously thought through. Clearly, it was an accolade, and only a fool would reject an accolade from people who choose to give you one unsolicited and who you respect. So yes, that was a draw for me, and I knew that it would be a quality event, and I know that I'm certain that it will be, and that was a simple draw.
Very, very much. Thank you very much. So, as a renowned historian with decades of knowledge on the collective history, the styles, and of course the culture surrounding Afrobeats, could you tell us about the historical and cultural significance, if any, of the Artmiabo Festival and what it might mean for the African art scene as a whole?
Okay, the answer is actually quite simple. This is a very complex question, but quite, genius in the sense that the answer is very simple. This is probably the first festival that is an art festival that celebrates the Afrobeats culture as a standalone genre. And it's actually a very intelligent concept, because the whole genius, I would say, of Afrobeat is in its all-encompassing nature. It's not just about the music, or should I say Afrobeats, it's not just about the music in itself, it's also about the cultural aspect, the broad cultural aspect, the attitude, the clothes, the fashion, the music, of course, the dance, the food even. So Afrobeats culture is about a sense of self, a reinforcement of the sense of self. And art is important as a vehicle of recording the culture, as recording culture, recording epochs. And what an art festival of this nature does is it's actually an historical document is being created, not just in the various art pieces, but in the broad overview of what is achieved at the end of the day, the broad record of what is achieved within it, which is a celebration of our art. And art is not, and like the visual art, it's a standalone genre, but it encompasses, it chronicles, it chronicles very broad swathes of human living, and in this instance, it's chronicling an extremely important genre. That sense of independence. We talk about African independence, decolonization. One of the greatest markers of decolonization is when we began to look inwards at our own culture and celebrate it, and just say, let's say, oh, well, listen, world, we are here. If you want part of this, you have to now speak with our accents, understand our dance if you want to enjoy this cultural feast. So as an art festival, it celebrates this powerful genre, and it's pioneering efforts in doing, because I'm not aware of any art festival on this scale at least that celebrates the art of Afrobeats, and that in itself is already a major landmark, and that's what makes it special. Truly is special.
I definitely have to agree, and I especially love your point about African independence, and that's really coming about when we learned to embrace our cultures, celebrate our cultures, and when people wanted to participate, we're saying you have to truly embrace it, participate, for you to be able to truly understand and enjoy it. And I definitely love your point there.
Thank you.
So one final question before I let you go. So you're set to be one of the big names headlining the festival alongside other greats like Obi Asika, Babatunde Banjoko, and Lemmy Garioko. What is the overall your hope to see from this festival as it pertains to Afrobeats and the African art scene?
Okay, a very good point. Now, one is another stake in the ground and saying, okay, look, we're staking our claim to this genre, we're heralding it, we're celebrating it, extremely important, that is already been achieved. The very fact that the festival is even going to hold at all is a victory, okay? And now, when we take it further, that the visual arts celebrating the genre is a very unique value proposition. And the fact that you've got all these talented artists chronicling, showcasing their works, proudly celebrating this genre, that in itself is another victory. So that I've linked two victories. Now we have an award ceremony which celebrates the legends of Afrobeats. Those who many of whom may not actually be known by maybe the millennials or even the Gen Z, whose contribution to the creation of one of the most powerful cultural products to emerge from Africa. Are getting their place in the sun. It is. I think that is a very, very important landmark. And these three outcomes on their own, and I'm sure if you called another person, to separate from or distinct from myself to answer the same question, they'll give you two or three other points which may be distinct from mine. So, which means the positive outcomes are limitless on a very, very subjective basis. I've named mine, but I think these three are important. I think is that if it was possible to have this festival more than once, it's easier said than done, because I understand the logistical challenges, how expensive it is, how painstakingly difficult it is in sheer efforts to organize. To have more than one of these events, it would be a beautiful thing. But I think Artmiabo have done their bit. By the time we're by the 1st of May, by 9-10 o'clock on the 1st of May, they would have done an incredible yeoman's work in getting this laid out, and it will be left for others, to carry on the baton from now on. But the thing is, the legacy of what shall have been achieved. Which I'm sure the festival will be recorded in visual and other forms. The legacy of what will be achieved at this event, is for the ages. And I cannot praise the founder and those behind this enough for the initiative in getting it set up and the diligence and grit. Trust me, I know in pursuing it to fruition. I say kudos, and long may their efforts be rewarded.
Yes. Thank you very much. And as you might know, the founder of the brand, Miabo Nyadike, is of course my mother, so there is a level of bias on my part where I say that she is perhaps, yeah, she is, no, she's perhaps the strongest and most stubbornly determined woman I know in this on this earth that God created.
Yes, I would. I think your bias is backed by objective evidence from others. That she definitely is, and you should be proud of her. I know you are.
I very much proud of her. Thank you very much for your time, and congratulations to you. Congratulations to you, sir.
Thank you so much, and thank you for a brilliant interview. Much obliged. Yeah, and good luck with everything.
You too, sir.
Thank you. All right, take care.
Take care, sir.
Appreciate it. Okay, bye-bye.
You can find him primarily on LinkedIn as well as academia. Thank you for listening. The Artmiabo International Art Festival is on its 3rd day, and I strongly encourage you to go to Ebony Life Place and experience this monumental event. As Mr. Keazor said, it is truly history in the making. Please subscribe to the podcast to be notified of new episodes.